Welcome to the HR Data Labs podcast, now part of the Work Defined Podcast Network. Join us as we explore the vital role of compensation, strategy, data, and people analytics in navigating today's complex business world. With the resources of Work Defined, we're bringing you deeper insights and actionable ideas from top HR experts. Now, here are your hosts, David Turetsky and Dwight Brown. Hello and welcome to the HR Data Labs podcast. I am your host and co-host, David Turetsky, alongside my best friend, partner in crime, Dwight Brown. Dwight Brown, how are you?
Good, David Turetsky. I'm very good. It's Friday. It's hard not to be good.
TGIF. But thank God also for TGIF, because we could use that F for Craig Friedman, who is our wonderful guest today. Craig, how are you?
Hi, David. Hi, Dwight. How you doing?
We're great.
Good. Nice to have you here.
We are super excited to have you on because the conversation we're going to have today is right up our alley. But before we get there, Craig, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am the Skills and Talent Transformation Leader for the St. Charles Consulting Group, which is part of NIIT.
Okay.
And I'm author of a book on the subject of skills-based organizations called Enterprise Skills Unlocked.
And we will actually have a link to your book in our podcast notes so people can buy it from you. Hopefully.
Great.
Yes. Well, tell us a little more about you. How'd you get to here?
Well, I've been a talent and learning professional consultant for about 30 years. I was with Accenture for about 10 years. I was with Deloitte for about 15 years. Somewhere in between those two, I tried to start up a couple of e-learning companies with mixed results, but very interesting stories to tell about those someday. I've been with now St. Charles for about the last 5 years, and I sort of lead up their thought leadership on things like skills and AI and learning transformation.
AI came into our conversation. Well, who got that on their bingo card, Dwight? That it came up within a minute and a half, actually almost 2 minutes.
Yeah, I think that one on your bingo card there.
So, Craig, what's one fun thing that no one knows about Craig Friedman?
Well, I own all 108 issues of the original run of Marvel's Star Wars comics, the one that started in 1977 when the movie came out.
Along with A New Hope.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't called A New Hope back then.
It wasn't called A New Hope.
Revisionist history is that.
Yep. Yeah. If you managed to get your hands on a copy of the original theatrical release, there was no A New Hope at the top of the scroll, the famous scroll.
I think Lucas kind of didn't understand at the time what he was sitting on. And even Alec Guinness wasn't sure what he was doing as he was drinking, getting to the set the first day. So, but then when he realized what pot of gold he uncovered and then created Empire, then he started realizing, well, I should episodic this thing.
Yep. Yeah. At least he had the sketch of a story for the first three, which is nice.
Well, did he have the sketch for the first six, or was it just the first one? I thought it was the first one, and then once he decided it was a theatrical success, then he kept going.
He had the sketch. He had the sketch, as I understand it. He had the sketch of a story for the first six.
Okay.
Sort of the history of Anakin Skywalker, if you will.
Yeah.
And then he realized it was too big of a story, so he focused on, when he created the first movie, he focused on what he thought would be the most interesting piece to start with. So he had an idea. He didn't have the full script, and you can tell some of the details because, there's like a love interest between Luke and Leia early on that they now distance themselves.
Very yucky afterwards.
Right. Right, which they totally distance themselves from.
Yeah. Well, and for those of us, and we could talk about Star Wars all day. Forget about the topic we were going to talk about, but actually, Craig, maybe we'll do a separate episode just on this. But okay, forget about it. Let's dive into our topic now, because I could talk about this all day, and Dwight will literally roll his eyes the entire time.
Yeah. I'll just sit here and listen.
His dog's behind him will do some fun things, but not in a good way. Anyways, our topic for today is how skills data is transforming HR into true business partners.
Hi, we're Meg and Amy from The Meg and Amy Show.
We're not only tech execs and big picture thinkers, we're also best friends.
We're curious learners. And on this podcast, we're challenging the status quo and activating the future.
And we're going to give advice about work and leadership, right, Meg?
You know, we can't help ourselves. But this podcast is about exploring possibility, not being right.
That sounds refreshing.
For more, tune in to The Meg and Amy Show.
So, Craig, our first question is, in a skills-based transformation, it's becoming a buzzword. Well, that phrase is becoming buzzword-ish. Mm-hmm. But what does it really mean in practice, and what are the benefits to those strategies?
Yeah, it's what it means in practice is, and it's all about data, really. It's fundamentally a data-driven transformation that's happening in talent. What it means is getting comprehensive skills data across that supports the whole talent infrastructure. By that, what I mean is not just, skills attached to people, like what skills, you have mastered, but skills attached to work tasks, skills attached to jobs, skills attached to workforce planning and recruiting. When you have a comprehensive infrastructure of skills data underlying the whole talent infrastructure, you can actually do a lot of things that you can't do without it.
Sure.
There's a whole bunch of talent strategies that you can leverage, more personalized, more efficient staffing, more personalized learning. And in some cases, you can broaden capability development. But sort of fundamentally, what's really going on is, for most of the past 30 years, the level of data we had to support talent processes kind of tops out at the person level. Like we hire a person, we give you an email, we stick you in a box on the org chart where you stay for years until you move your box. But we didn't really have very transparent information beneath that. That's what this skills is doing. It's bringing the level of granularity that we have about the whole talent ecosystem down a level of granularity, but not just down a level, with a very interesting piece of data. Skills is an interesting piece of data because it lives both in business systems and people systems. Right. In the sense that usually we have business systems, which is all the data about our customers and our products, and then there are people systems, which is all the data about our people. At an individual level, skills tells me something about me, what I can do. But when you aggregate it, it tells me something about my business capability and what, as a business, we're capable of producing and bringing to market. And so because it straddles both, not only are you getting the benefit of more granular data, you're sort of shifting the whole talent process from an exercise in headcount management to an exercise in capability management, which is a giant step closer alignment to the business functions that we're supporting.
But doesn't it require a ton of maintenance in that case? There's a ton of maintenance into not just creating the job model that has the skills painted on it, so the job description and adding in the skills that are required by job, but then the assessment of those skills by person. And obviously that's a moving target because some skills expire, some skills get evolved, some skills get acquired. And so this becomes almost a never-ending living repository that has to be constantly fed in order to stay up to date.
Yes, it sure does. But on the one hand, it's not necessarily different than the information we have about our ever-changing products and product lines and product specific, and the people who are sourcing that. And it's not like we don't have data that is constantly changing in our other business systems. But what I would say is we have better tools now, and that's largely why this is happening now as opposed to 10 years ago. Because if you look 10 years ago, it took, I don't know if you've ever actually printed out the HR list of every employee in a company. I've done it many, many times, and it's always like 20, 25% out of date because of everybody moving around. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yes.
And so the idea of multiplying that by 10 or 20 skills per person was just completely unfeasible to manage that much data. But today, with the with sort of modern AI tools, hit the bingo card again, we can actually manage that data. And a lot of the reason we're doing this now when we couldn't do it before is because of these more advanced tools in data analytics and AI and machine learning that actually help us manage data at that scale.
So, Craig, if we take into consideration this massive amount of data now, and now, as you mentioned, if you printed out all the people, there would be tons of data that's wrong. Doesn't that mean that the data governance now, in the context of all this additional information, it puts a lot of stress on those additional new technologies, and it means that we now need to worry about whether they're actually capturing the right data and how. So that does put stress on these new tools, doesn't it?
It does, but again, it's not in principle different to the same sort of strategies of data management that we use when we're looking at business systems and business data. It's probably very new for talent groups, and that's sort of a big theme with this whole skills-based organization. It's like, this is not new for the company as a whole typically, but it is new for the talent organization who hasn't had this kind of intensive data-driven part of their business in the same way, right? But yeah, no, we're starting to get industrial strength with some of the data management tools and data analytics that all these various tools are using. And this is not, just to be clear, this is not, we're going to make a list of skills and just tag it to the job architecture, the job descriptions, and we're done, right? Like, this is an ecosystem of this is a tech stack, right? This is an ecosystem of different systems that are communicating back and forth. And you have to have a strategy for how you're going to do that. Different strategies have skills data in them, either explicitly or implicitly. I mean, just if you look at learning systems by themselves, you probably, most companies probably have multiple different vendors. They all have an implicit skills taxonomy, right? All their learning objectives are tied to how they organize skills. Right. And so, like, somehow you have to harmonize all that data. And there's several different strategies you can use to harmonize that data. You can sort of all push it through a single source of truth, or you can stick it in a data lake and harmonize it there. There's different strategies. But yeah, no, like I said, like, this is new for most HR tech groups. Yeah. Like, they are being asked to do this much data management.
Enjoying the conversation? Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode packed with insights and strategies. Now, let's dive back in. And all that technology that you're talking about, if it's in one specific stack, like one HRMS with payroll system and talent system, yeah, I can get that. If you add this insight, if you add all of these inputs into it, that it would consume it and know how to index it and cross-reference it. But the fact is that most of the organizations that we're talking to right now have several, including best-of-breed solutions. So It will mean that those best-of-breed solutions need to incorporate these taxonomies separately and be able to reference them, through APIs, so that and we're getting really technical, which makes Dwight and I very happy. but it then complicates that. I mean, because you were talking about workforce planning systems and learning systems and talent management systems like recruiting and compensation and market pricing. And, there's a ton of systems that will now have to talk to each other in the language of skills that they haven't done that before.
That's right. Although I would say,
the guru over here, who's the data governance genius. And so,
so the way that I think about this, and I guess I've got both a statement and a question in here. I think of skills and competencies. I think of a neural network, if you will. And we tend to look at things two-dimensionally because that's what we have available to us. Whereas you're going to have value nodes within an organization. You're going to have the skills that are attached to each one of those value nodes. You're going to have the jobs that are attached, and you're going to have the people that are attached. Right. And all these things look literally like a neural network. And in my mind, it's just the way that I think about that. So to that point, do you feel like organizations have difficulty latching onto the concept of skills and competencies, or implementing it because it's two-dimensional and it's difficult to see all the interrelatedness within an organization? It's just too complex to see that. What's your feeling on that?
I think most of the clients that I work with right now Yeah, they have a little bit of a simplistic short-term view as to how this will likely play out over years of development.
Hmm.
So, for example, the most common thing is like a learning group decides to do a skills taxonomy
Right.
kind of project, right?
Yeah.
So that is a housekeeping task. And whether they're doing it manually or with technology help, they make a giant list of skills. They have this very painful process that they go through to organize it into families and create relationships to create a formal, structured data structure for their skills. And then step one, they use it to drive their learning. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's about as much view as there is at a lot of clients right now. Right. They haven't yet thought to how does this become an enterprise data structure? How is the recruiting team going to use this? How is the workforce plan team going to use this? How is the talent marketplace going to leverage it? How does the job architecture leverage it? Right. Mm-hmm. But the truth is they would do better to have the longer term focus because so for example, if I was think of the skill of project management, just to pick a simple skill, right? The level of information that the L&D team needs to do their job about project management is much more detailed than almost anybody else in the company because they're learning people and they have to create sub-modules and little videos and it's all got to link together, right? The staffing team in a talent marketplace doesn't need to know the micro skill of estimating time to complete inside project management. Project management skills is probably fine. However, they do need to know context. Mm-hmm. They need to know, have you done project management in finance? Have you done it with SAP as opposed to this other tool? Have you done it in this industry, right? And so they have to merge a higher level of data with other data, right? Mm-hmm. You shift to recruiting, you have the same story again, right? Project management is probably enough detail for the recruiting team, but they're going to care a lot about scope and scale of your experience because they have to figure out how much to pay you. And that's what drives the compensation offer, right? Is I do project management globally, on 5-year projects. I do project management in an L&D team with 5 people and projects that last 6 months, right? That scope and scale is what tends to drive your compensation, right? So the notion is you're creating a structured data taxonomy in skills, but not for one group. It's the information that they all can agree on, that they all need. It's the project management. Every other group needs to then append metadata to the skills taxonomy in order to get their job done. So I need to link the skills with either context or I need to with scope and scale, or in the case of L&D, it just happens to be more detail about the skills, right? And so that's where the machine learning comes in, right? Because you've got the structured data at the skill level, but all the other data points you're using machine learning to do the searches and the appends and the connections and the adjacencies. And so again, it sort of circles back to this is a far more sophisticated kind of technology solution than most talent teams are used to having to deal with, right? I mean, they're mostly about LMS and authoring systems and HRIS systems, right? Like this is far more sophisticated kinds of technology. But there, they would do better to structure it with an enterprise view because it actually would, in the long run, probably make their jobs easier.
Doesn't the problem there become like Dwight was mentioning that there needs to be someone at a different level, maybe the HRIT level, maybe in talent management, someone who needs the deepest level, maybe it's the learning people, who spearhead the cross-functional team that enables the entire organization to not only understand what's available, but what's necessary, and then be able to set up the full stack to be able to support not just the most granular level, but also the most basic level. So someone's got to own that. And as he and I have talked about many times on the show, there really isn't a data governance function other than HRIT inside of most corporations.
Yeah, I am sort of a believer that I think at some point there'll be a chief skills officer sort of evolve over time or something similar in organizations. They may call it something different, but this is a little beyond everybody's expertise at the moment. What's that?
Isn't that mostly an OD officer if one exists?
I mean, it's an intersection, right? It's an intersection between, there's definitely some level of L&D knowledge that is helpful because just the content is skills, but it's a lot of IT and a broader talent perspective. I don't know that anybody clearly owns this at most companies, the intersection that this is at. It tends to be owned currently by the L&D group. And, we could have a long conversation about whether that's ultimately the right answer.
Yeah, that'll be another podcast episode.
Yeah. I mean, it tends to be because the word is skills, and everyone is like, "Oh, skills must be the L&D team that owns that, right?"
Yeah.
Like,
a lot of people are anxious to do that too. Like, I don't want to touch that.
At the moment, what I'm tending to see at clients is somebody who, for some reason, has an unusual collection of skills is stepping up. And sometimes they're coming from an L&D group with a strong tech background, or sometimes they're coming from a technology group, but for some reason they have like a little bit of an L&D background, but they're, maybe they're an L&D tech kind of person. In some cases, they're coming from talent. But it's a new combination of skills, right? And it's definitely like, there's definitely a lot of education that this person who's leading the skills transformation is doing. Incidentally, there's more than one way to go about the whole skills journey. And like, so far, we're sort of assuming that it's a talent-led, enterprise-wide kind of initiative. But that's not the only journey. Like and we actually do a lot of this, where we take sort of a business first focused. So like take a business unit that has a particular business problem and just focus on the portion of the jobs and the skills and the tasks that support that business unit and that particular business problem. Figure out all the systemic challenges related to that product line or that business unit, and then start to use that as a blueprint to go to the next business unit, which, has some advantages, right? Like it tends to simplify some of the challenges because you don't have to think about it for the whole company. You only have to think about it for, like, it provides focus, right? Especially when you're building the skills taxonomy, because you're like, oh, it's for this job and for building these kind of products. We have very specific concrete examples to tie everything to.
But the problem with that is that when you get to the next business unit and it doesn't fit, then you have to consider, how do I change the overall model, or do I have to create a completely new one?
Yeah, and yes, you could do either of those, or you can leverage, again, AI to make two different taxonomies speak to one another.
Right.
Right. Because you don't need the funny part is, right, you don't actually need the whole taxonomy to be consistent. If I need one part of the business talking to another part of the business from the perspective of skills, I don't need not all 9 layers to have the identical taxonomy. There's a subset of data that I'm reporting on that gives me enterprise-wide capability, workforce planning kinds of data. And so you can isolate that. And so, like, you can say you have a little bit of a different tax. We've been experimenting a lot with federated taxonomy sort of tenants, where you have different people owning different parts of the skills for different reasons, and they're governed separately, but that they have connection points, right, interfaces where they can speak to get an enterprise perspective.
That's cool.
Yeah, there's so much there, and so much interrelatedness as well as differentiation, and that therein lies the challenge with the application of that. So I can see why you'd be looking at that federated approach with those, and looking at some of the crosswalk. What is that commonality? How do we leverage that, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah.
You can also see how it might fail if it doesn't support each other, right? The federation is one thing, but what happens is that if you have too much difference, then, you were talking before about the crosswalk, Craig. If there's too much difference and then there has to be this just complete separation, it may cost so much to be able to maintain all those differences.
It might. When we go that route for the skills journey, right, sort of the business unit by business unit, one of the benefits of doing that way is the ROI, right? Because if this piece of the skills solution is in service of revenue capture, we need to double the output of this group, and to do that, we need more people with more skills, and to do that, we're going to have to beef up our skills infrastructure so that we can more quickly get to market before the competitor and double our output and double our team size. if you're doubling revenue as you go, nobody's very concerned about the cost.
No one's going to say anything. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And so the benefit of doing that route is sort of the change management benefits, right? You're adding clear value in excess of the cost with every step because you're solving a business problem that someone has determined has a clear ROI that's worth the cost. That's the benefit of that approach. The challenge of that approach, of course, is you're going to have to cobble together the skills solution from different business units, right? And there's definitely challenges. It's not impossible. It's just different challenges, right? If you do the talent-driven approach, you might still end up with federated skills, right? Like I've talked to plenty of clients who are like, I don't want to manage my technology skills and my soft skills in the same tenant. They're too different, right? There's so many things about the topology of those two skills. One changes all the time. One doesn't. One is highly subjective.
Yeah.
They have different assessment methods, right?
Yeah.
Like the whole dynamic of the sort of the shape of the whole skills family is so different between like, you know, technology skills and, you know, internal leadership kinds of skills that they manage them in different tenants. This is where the competencies come in, because then you need a competency framework to say these technical skills plus these professional leadership soft skills help produce, you know, this capability in this business unit, right? And so you have the reverse of that challenge, right? Before, you're creating a structure that is very business focused from day one, and you're cobbling together the skills taxonomies in the back end. If you start with talent, you have the reverse problem, right? You're creating the skills in a way that makes sense for talent, but then you need competencies to group them together into useful work-focused kinds of outcomes.
So that got very complex. So I think a lot of people are thinking, good Lord, Craig, how do I keep all this straight? What's the role of technology in all of this? And you mentioned AI before, but what's the role of technology and how do people actually get this to happen? Because that seems very, very, even in my mind, I don't know about you, Dwight, but it seems very complex.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, again, I go back to the good news that we started with. It's a data-driven transformation. And the fun thing is we know a lot about data-driven transformations. We've done them in other parts of the business and the company, right? We know how to attack these sort of challenges, right? We start with the business requirements. We understand the scope. We analyze the data challenges. We create the data model, et cetera, all the way down to like how, we test out the different processes that we run through. We know how to do a data-driven technology transformation. It's not fundamentally different for HR. It just is new to be using skills data as opposed to product data. Mm-hmm. But we've done these kind of things before. All those processes that we know about good data management are still completely relevant.
Yeah, it does definitely. It gets complex, but like you say, the good data management really starts to help. And it's like anything. Sometimes when you put it in front of somebody with a simple picture to say, "Look, this is how this works. This is how you need to be thinking about this. This is how we as an organization need to be thinking about this." Then I think it's going to start to click for people. And like you said, using AI, because AI certainly helps with ideas on how to present that information and how to effectively help people understand the nuances of this, so that it's, because at the end of the day, it sounds complex, but it's really pretty darn simple. And it's just all of the details all over the place that make it feel complex to people.
Yeah. There's a lot of detail complexity, but not necessarily dynamic complexity, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
You have to change your business processes in order to be able to get that detail, right? You can't just go along as things were. You have to imbue all that detail into whether it's that workforce planning or that recruiting.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Again, not uncommon for a data-driven transformation, but sure, people, process, technology, they're all interlinked. Processes are going to change. People's jobs, like there's going to be new jobs. There's going to be, some old jobs are going to thin out and other jobs are going to, upskill to have to do new things in this new environment. And then there's going to, like your point about assessment and validation, that's going to grow a lot. Right.
Yep.
But curriculum management. So I'm talking about in the L&D group, right? Mm-hmm. The L&D group, as an example, they do a lot of work with curriculum design and curriculum maintenance. Like, well, first I have new hire training and then I have manager training, and these are the things that are in there based on the jobs I have today. But every time someone goes and changes the jobs or the org chart, or, spins off some new offshore group or redesigns the processes because of technology, they have to redo all of their curriculum.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in a skills-based world, they don't have to do as much of that, because as long as someone is saying, well, now this job has these new skills, it will in real time say, well, here's the gap between the skills associated with that job and you, automatically.
And here's what you need to do to learn to be able to close that gap.
Right. And you can do that on a project basis. You can do that if you redesign work processes, if you redesign the org. So it simplifies a lot the constant curriculum redesign piece. However, what it adds is more assessment and validation, because before, most of our assessment of do you have this skill or not has been coming primarily out of formalized learning courses and programs. Now we have an ecosystem in a skills-based world where we're giving you credit for things you're learning on the job, things you're learning by practice, things you're learning externally, things you're learning informal versus informal through coaching and apprenticeship. I have multiple methods to acquire skills, and I need some process to cross-validate. Does Dwight have this skill if he's taken a training course, but David's got 3 months of experience? Are they equal? Are they
Right?
How do we cross-validate right across these multiple methods? So that piece will grow.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it becomes personalized, and it means personalized learning plans, which are more effective because you're starting from where the level is that you are, instead of going back to the beginning again for everybody, pissing people off that they're wasting time. Instead, they're just closing gaps that are required within the assessments that have personalized for them.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the L&D benefits, right? Is it's less about manager training that's the same for all new managers, regardless of individual differences. Right now, things are more granular. We're doing sub-modules of the skills that make that up. You can get credit for things that you already know, and I'll just feed you, development opportunities based on what your unique gaps are. So yeah, definitely more personalized, more efficient in that regard.
You'd think that there was an ROI just in that, because of all the wasted time and energy and money that we have in the L&D group, training people who probably don't need it, but also just wasting their time. You'd think there would be an ROI right for that.
There is. It's just that L&D budgets don't keep the C-suite up at night in general, right, as compared to their operational budgets or their business budgets, right? Sure. And so if you're having a conversation like, that plan you have to double output, I can help with that. That might be a, who knows, $200 million business opportunity for the company. And as opposed to the training budget, whatever it may be, $20 million, $40 million, like it's so much smaller in comparison. And it doesn't usually keep the company up at night in the same way, right? So there is an ROI, but it's not as strategic as if you try to tie it to business outcomes, right? I mean, it's not a bad thing to say, I'm going to take a small budget item and make it smaller. You know what I mean? Like to say your L&D budget, right, which is largely considered by the C-suite to be a little administrative and back office, right, and kind of small. If I came and I said, I'm going to save you 20% on that, no one's going to have a problem with that. It's just not as strategic an argument as to say, hey, I've got a better idea. We're going to use this to drive, growth in one of your key product lines, right?
Right. So if a company sees this as being something they want to do and they want to leverage this, where do they start? Because it seems like it's such a big undertaking. Where would you tell them to start from? Yeah.
So usually what we do when we work with clients is we do a little bit of sort of the business cases like we were talking about, right? Like it's actually a good segue because there will be certain talent business cases. There will be certain business cases, right? And it's unique to every company. I'll give you another example, right? Here's a really interesting but unique one for some companies. In professional services and in technology, any company that lives on billable hours, project-driven billable hours, right? Mm-hmm. When they have people who are in between projects, sort of sitting on the bench, right? They're essentially like inventory in a warehouse incurring storage charges, right? Like they're a cost item. As soon as they can get those people billable, they're driving revenue. So they have a very interesting and unique business case, which is, if I can improve by 10% the efficiency of finding the right resource and getting them billable, that's driving top line revenue growth for them, right? You can do that with talent marketplaces, right? And so they have that particular group of companies have a very strong business case around talent marketplaces driving more efficient staffing. And that's a really great place for those companies to start. And a lot of them are starting there, right? So again, in some cases, it might be talent driven. In some cases, it might be operationally driven. It depends on the nature of the company and the different costs involved. And we have, every company is a little unique, but what we start with is the business cases where skills can make a difference, right? Yeah. And then we rank them and prioritize them and then work with leadership to sort of set up a plan for, you're not going to do this all on one project. It's going to be a sequence of projects that in one way or another, you're going to link together over a series of years, right? So what's the order of the projects? Let's create an order that we think is the most strategic, that maximizes value, minimizes risk, right? We'll weigh the different options of the different order of how to tackle these in, and we'll go about it that way. And some will be talent-driven journeys in some companies, and others will be very business-driven, right? Because we work with professional service firms and pharmaceutical firms and mining firms. Like, we work with everybody, right? And so they're all such unique businesses that I don't know that there's one right place to always start.
Well, I like your example of the professional services firm where if you have people sitting on the bench, but you could utilize them better if you knew what skills they had, I would start with that. I would start with anything that creates value and creates revenue. So I like that example.
Yeah.
I would start there. Well, it's been awesome, Craig. We've we've talked about so much. My mind is swimming without other questions, but I think what we're going to have to do is ask you to come back, and maybe we'll get a round two out of you on this.
Would love to.
Well, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Thanks for joining us, Craig. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, my mind's swirling right now. I've got about 1 million ideas going through. This is dangerous. This is very dangerous.
Them up. We'll definitely save them up. Thank you all for listening. Take care and stay safe. Thank you for listening to the HR Data Labs podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe and share it with your network. Also, check out the HR Data Labs Brown Bag Lunch every Friday on LinkedIn. You can also check out the recordings on Spotify. Thank you, take care, and stay safe.